Good morning and welcome to our live lab learning session today for easing the transition to AutoCAD Electrical. I'm sorry guys. I'm Amy Berry with Applied Software. I'm one of the strategic account managers for the manufacturing and electrical team. And with us today we're proud to have Travis Evans, one of the outstanding technical specialists from Autodesk. I want to introduce you to our live lab learning website and class structure. We have multiple classes here that are regularly available. You can reach this on our website at livelablearning.com. These are virtual classes and you can learn more about those here. We also have some upcoming events. We'll be doing several webcasts coming up. We have a simulation within Inventor Professional. We have a benefits of Autodesk maintenance subscription. That's been a very popular webcast to help our customers understand really what all is available with their subscription and how to utilize it on the website. Then we'll follow that in February with the optimized factory layout in 2D. In addition to that, I'll be attending a motor and drive show in Orlando next week, so if anyone's attending that, come by and see me. And then also we are offering our Inventor Fundamentals Live Lab class in February, so that's our next class dates on that. Those are 8 sessions from 9 to 12:30 in the morning. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Jeff Pearson at the information below. With that, I want to thank you again for attending our webinar series this morning, Easing the Transition to AutoCAD Electrical, and I'm going to now turn that over to Travis Evans.
Thanks, Amy, and hopefully I can perceive my reputation being outstanding, so I appreciate that. And so yeah, what we wanted to talk about was easing the transition from AutoCAD to AutoCAD Electrical. And to do that, well, we need to refresh you on the benefits of what AutoCAD Electrical can bring. I know we did a previous session last month, so if you missed that one, you can go back and watch the recording as well. But we're going to give you a little brief introduction to what is AutoCAD Electrical, and then we're going to focus on that, easing that transition. So AutoCAD Electrical, it's a flavor of AutoCAD built specifically for control designers. As you can kind of see, it's AutoCAD to the bone, right? Anything I can do in AutoCAD, I can do in Electrical. And I always like the Mia Hamm, Michael Jordan version where it says anything you can do, I can do better. Right? So that's what AutoCAD Electrical can do for you. So if it's control design, it does it a lot better. If you want to integrate with AutoCAD Electrical, which is our 3D parametric modeler, we can integrate that as well as leveraging all those 2D AutoCAD drawings that you have today and making them more intelligent, and hopefully that's kind of what we're going to show you today. So talking about benefits, creating those type of tools, those type of drawings, you can do about 70 to 75, even upwards of 85% faster with creating those tools, because you're using electrical specific commands. You're not just using dumb lines, arcs, and circles anymore. They actually have intelligence built inside. They're blocks with attributes, right? So we can build specifics. Looking at the top 10, you can kind of see, and we're going to turn it up to 11 today. We're going to show you how you can integrate electrical and mechanical design drawings as well. So we're going to give you a top 10, but we're going to turn it up to 11. So there's an idea of what we're going to show. Let me just go into a little bit deeper discussion of each one of those. All right, so symbol libraries. That's where the basics of all the integration comes from. Similar to like if you looked at AutoCAD Mechanical, it has libraries, components. So does AutoCAD Electrical. Big benefit whether you're using AutoCAD or AutoCAD Electrical, it gives you libraries. So speaking specifically to the AutoCAD Electrical libraries, there's almost 1 million different unique part identifiers, right? So a big database that you can customize and you can use what size you want, as well as different international standards, right? So if you have multiple sites in different locations, really help you with that, as well as multiple disciplines, not just electrical, but also hydraulic and pneumatic and P&ID symbols as well. Automate wiring numbering techniques. So instead of creating just text, we actually create smart text and referencing those lines, and that pushes downstream when we're placing component tags, automatically referencing that information. Generating automatic reports. One of the biggest benefits that you can leverage from using a tool like AutoCAD Electrical is the bill of material functionality. Some of those reports, right? So instead of manually doing that today, which introduced manual, it's prone to error. They're manual. We're humans. We make mistakes. And so if we automate that process, it makes it a lot more streamlined. Error checking, so as I'm going and placing components and things, having some error checks done, and being able to cross-reference our diagrams and within our projects as AutoCAD Electrical works the idea of a project, we can leverage that information and cross-reference between those drawings. Creating smart panel layouts. Talking to the leveraging of that information, I can create my P&ID or my schematic drawing, right? And then I want to leverage that in an electrical footprint, how it's going to look in the physical environment, and having that relate. So for instance, if I put a push button here on this unit and I want to represent that and relate that back to the schematic, has all the details behind there, I can definitely do that. Or a panel layout, right? I want to lay out a panel during the schematics for it, and I want to lay out the panel for that. That's exactly what I can do. As well as adding additional electrical specific features. So instead of creating a wire and telling it it's this wire, actually creating a wire. It's actually wire properties, red, black, blue, yellow, white, whatever color, whatever gauge, right, that information. And then there's tools like trimming those or adding buttons. And instead of going to a library of blocks, I can actually go to those actual components, as well as many, many more. PLC I/O drawings. So if I want to create PLCs, typically today it'll be documented some way, and somehow majority use something like Excel. Why don't I just leverage my Excel drawing, my Excel file, and manipulate it in a standard that'll work for AutoCAD Electrical, so I can push that information and actually have it populate those drawings for me automatically. As well as sharing drawings and tracking changes. So within that, DWG, it's compatible with anything that can read a DWG. So if I'm opening AutoCAD today, or I have AutoCAD LT, or if I have some kind of viewer that is viewing those DWG files, nothing's going to change. We write out DWGs. Just has added intelligence. So those who have AutoCAD Electrical can see that intelligence, make those changes intelligently. So now to number 10, and then turn it up to 11. So we're going to look at how do we leverage those existing drawings. We talked about how we have them, what kind of components or features are there to really help us ease that transition. So we'll talk about conversion tools and things of that nature. As well as how do I integrate with my electrical and mechanical design package. So if I have 3D designs, how can I integrate my electrical world? How do those two work together? And so we'll show you that today. So there's a top 10 overview, something for you to think about of reasons to move to a AutoCAD Electrical. But now, how do I ease that transition? So with that, let's take a look and let's actually hop in the tool. For those first-timers with us today and haven't seen AutoCAD Electrical, we're going to, we'll show you a few of those other top 10. The majority of the time we'll focus on transitioning those tools. But to do that, to understand the benefits of why I'd want that information, kind of got to show you some of those other tools first. So we're looking over here at how AutoCAD Electrical is set up in the idea of a project, and that allows it to do cross-drawing referencing, right? So if I have my schematic, and then I have my panel, right? So here's my panel. Get a nice little preview here. How am I connecting those two? It's because I have a project. And another added benefit is I'm working with a data management solution like Autodesk Vault. This project manager is going to work seamlessly with inside of Vault. So when I'm making changes, it knows it's referencing that information. Works great with Vault. So if you're adopting AutoCAD Electrical, I highly recommend adopting Vault as well. So if we're looking at additional tools and benefits, so here are the tabs, right? Our schematic tab, our panel tab, our reports tab. These are tabs you don't see in your AutoCAD version, whether it be LT or traditional AutoCAD. This is where we're at in that functionality, but you can see here, lines, arcs, circles. I can create all those other fancy commands that we keep adding inside of AutoCAD. You get the benefit of those as well, but we want to focus today more on the specifics of the electrical package. So adding things like wire rungs. If I want to add a wire rung, it's just that easy. To create this, we zoom in here. That's 3 circles. That could be a block, right? I could add a block and then a line, but don't have to do that with AutoCAD Electrical. And the benefit, if we take a look at this information, we can see that it's actually a black 14-gauge wire. There's those properties tied to there. AutoCAD Electrical is going to manage that in layers, right? So it adds it to its own layer. We can kind of see that intelligence. If I want to add some additional wires, right, those connections, I get a nice little preview saying, hey, I'm going to connect to this wire I'm going to connect to that wire. I get a nice little preview. And then it shows some of the other benefits, right? So adding components. We talked about blocks. So if I wanted to convert, some of my own blocks and things, how could I do that? So things it does automatically trims wire. So again, benefit of using a tool like AutoCAD Electrical, I can look up in that browser, right? So I can find, those parts that I've used before. I can create this idea of my own favorites. That's something I use, or I can customize this. Within AutoCAD Electrical, there's over 40 different manufacturers, so Allen Bradley, E, and ABB, all the big guys, right? Their information's in here, right? Their catalog numbers, their footprints, and things like that. So we can add all that detailed information. Right? I can see cross-referencing. I can reference my component tags. So here, push button 403. It's on line 403. So what happens if, that moves, right? So if that moves this whole system, right? If we move it, we can kind of see how things are going to behave, right? So if I want to move this to call line 402, what's happening? Everything's going to update. Yes, let's retag it, right? So now I'm on 402, right? So I've changed that information up, automatically going to do that for me. So some other things we talked about is being able to move those components, automatically keeping those trim components, right? So I don't have to re-extend, re-trim, do that work, that nonsense. It's going to do that for me, building all that information in. So there's a quick way to kind of show some of the things we can do, and it wouldn't be complete with an AutoCAD Electrical demo if I didn't show you some of the electrical commands, right? So if I generate a bill of material, so here I have this panel. I go to my report tab, right? Here's my panel reports. I can pull my bill of material from my project, right, or from my active drawing. We'll just keep it a little simpler here. You can see the detailed information. I can change how that format's going to change, so the customization of those footprints, right? So if I want to add additional information, I can do that. It's just that simple. And we'll go ahead and put it on a drawing. Pick that location, and we'll say, okay. All right, so now you can kind of see all the drawing information that's inside of there. And at its basis, it's just an Excel spreadsheet file placed on my drawing. But if it's referencing all that information, I have to manually go in and count how many push buttons I have. It's recognizing that for me. You can kind of see quantities, checking all that information for me. So there's an introduction to AutoCAD Electrical, quick, easy, and dirty, right? But at least you got an idea of some of the benefits now, so that when we talk about why we'd want to convert a file over to electrical, helping us ease that transition, you can kind of see some of those benefits of why we want to do that. The first thing we want to show is inside of this diagram, right? It's just some DWG. You see it's all just one color, right? We multicolor, it doesn't matter. We'll kind of show you some of the different drawings we'll be working with. But the first thing we want to do is to be able to start to leverage some of that intelligence. I want to show some of those conversion types. So here we can kind of see that I can create my own wire file. All right, so here I'm going to go ahead and we'll create a red layer. All right, so now I've created a layer. We can give it its own color. Right, so we can start to customize how this is going to work. So I'm adding all those red wires, right, those 16 gauges. I'm going to add that information. I can also import, right? So if I wanted to, utilize a drawing, something I can reference or add existing layers. I can look from some layers I've used recently. Right, so we'll add that, and we'll go ahead and we'll change that, right? So we keep those same layers, but we're going to make this a 16-gauge layer, right? Keep a little bit of consistency. Like I mentioned, we can import. So if I've used a drawing or have a template, right, that I can leverage, I can pull from that template as well. So we can add maybe some white wires, some blue wires. We'll add those, and I'm building up my wire layers, right? So it's just saying, hey, what kind of wires are you going to possibly use to help within our reporting and our bill of materials and things of that nature? So now I have some wire types. All right, so if we look at this this line, we just look at its properties. Nothing really fancy. It's just a line. I know additional properties that are available. So if I wanted to take that and convert those, so if we look at our conversion tools, we can kind of see here that we can change the wire type. Right? So if I want to say, hey, this can be a black wire, we can grab all these little wires. And what's nice is you'll see that even though I window select, it's just choosing lines, right? So it's intelligent to know how to convert that information in those blocks, it's kind of just going to overlook them. All right, so really hard to tell in a black wire, so why don't we just show, we kind of see a little difference there. So why don't we just try that again? Just talking to the benefits, right? And I'll see that, hey, I'm using some of those wires, these layers are being used on my drawing. So just window select. We'll select the rest of these wires, we'll make them red. Right? It's also intelligent to know kind of the ins and the outs. So excuse me. So it's also intelligent to know to the ins and the outs. Right? So if I want to choose, my white wires, and if I want to just kind of use the back end, right, select those guys. Come over here, select the back end as well. Right? As it goes through, it's going to know to convert the remaining wires. So already we've added a little bit of intelligence, right? So if I look, and to prove that, so if I look at this and look at its properties, I can see, hey, I got some electrical commands that are now available to me. I've added that level of intelligence. I can see my wire layer. I could then choose and change that wire, but so now we're actually dealing with wires instead of just lines. It's just that simple. One other thing to look at is this ladder rung, right? So here we can just see it's a combination of some sketches and text entities, right? Just the text inside of its properties. But how can I convert that information? Well, it's just as easy as say, hey, where does it start? Let's grab the other side as well. Now we can kind of see, I can customize it to how I want it to look. I want 40, in each rung, what the spacing is going to be. And just like that, I can now convert those objects, right? So now if we look, I can see here, I can actually edit that component. So again, it's an actual entity now. It knows about that information. So I've converted that information over. Right? So now it's actually a smart ladder inside of AutoCAD Electrical, and talking to the benefits of that is something we didn't show, is something you can do. We talked about it, but automatic wire numbering. So we can go ahead and add, those wires. So if we go back to kind of schematics and we want to look at, wiring numbers, we can kind of see here what we're interested in. I can kind of pick on an individual wire basis, or I can go ahead and pick all my wires, right, to really start to manage that information. So we can go ahead and do it drawing wide, right, and so we can kind of see all those wires that are kind of being converted over, right, so you can kind of see that information as it's done. So really nice to be able to leverage a tool like that to automatically create those wires. But what if we want to kind of do it kind of more on an individual basis, right? So I want to convert some of these wires. So to show you some of those benefits here, if we take this wire and we change it back to just a single line, to show some of the benefits as we're building this up, and you can start to think if it makes sense to convert everything or start from scratch. There's definitely positives and for both of those. So here we have our change, wire types. We can go ahead and convert those, as well as convert text to wire numbers. Right. So here it says, hey, what's your wire, and then you can choose your text. So it's just that easy to go through and say, hey, map this already indicated wire naming structure. Right. So instead of renaming the entire process, I can choose which ones I want. I can then choose kind of those wires, and hey, lo and behold, this isn't a wire, but it's intelligent enough to know. Say, hey, well, what do you want it to be? So I'll go through and I'll choose that, right? And now I've wired that up, change that back over to an intelligent wire from a static line. So a lot of different ways we can start to look at that information to really convert that over. So if we take a look at, in summary, what we did is we took some of the blocks, right, this ladder rung, converted it to an intelligent ladder rung, so then I can reference, these lines inside of the drawing to generate my wire numbers. Created those lines, converted them over to wires so that I could, again, complete that process. So let's take a look at, because there's different levels of designs out there, right? So there's some that are completely DWG, no basic LT, maybe with some blocks, but there's also some that have a little bit more intelligence in them. So we'll take a look at another drawing. So here in this drawing, you can see I have some blocks, maybe with some attributes, right? And that's all the electrical components are blocks with attributes. So we can take a look at how we can take that information and start to really build upon it. So let's take this guy for example here, and we can look to see what's going on, adding some tags information, right? So here we have attributes, right? So we can just add some additional attributes to this process, right? So we'll call this tag 1. We'll give it a value of 1FLS. We can customize the height. We can customize the location where that's going to go. We can even hide that information, but here you can kind of see that tagged information. And we'll go ahead and we'll change this, and we can add that to a specific layer, right? So we'll add this to my component tag layer. Now we start to build a little bit more information in there. Adding some additional details is just that simple once again. So I can grab this layer. Maybe we'll add a component, right? So a catalog component. So in this catalog, what that's going to allow me to do is, we talked about before about running, bill of material reports, right? So having that static information that I couldn't, address beforehand, but now actually have a means to delivering that information. So here we can kind of see that information and start to build upon that. So if we looked at our reports tab, and I can build a report, from my active drawing, pull up that information, and now the first thing you'll see is that I can have some of that information to start to report from. So really good beneficial. I can do that same process going through and reporting upon that information. The next, thing we can do to help transition is, you can see I'm not just adding some tags, but what if I have these blocks and I want to convert them more to what the electrical database uses, so having that same level of similarity. So if I look at my conversion tools once again, and I can see I have some additional tools, right? I want to convert to a schematic component. So if I want to take what component I'm looking at, right? So I can reference this guy, pull him from. I'm going to be able to then open up that same content browser where we were looking for that information, and we can start to really pull through the information that we want to pull from. So I have that circuit breaker, right, and I can place that here on that line, start to build that information, and then because I had it with a block with some attributes, I could just simply map those to the locations that I want. Right, I have some miscellaneous tag referencing, some cross-referencing here. We can actually go ahead and look at our pin connectors as well, right? So pin 1, X1, pin 2 is Y1. So now we actually can reference all that information, converting a block that had some attributes in it into a more intelligent block for reporting purposes, right? So I can report on regular blocks, but I can report on AutoCAD Electrical blocks. Also some other tools to help extend those lines, right? Those are just extending those wires to those components. And so now if I wanted to take it to the next level, I can convert those wires again like we did before, and then I could dynamically move that block around. Other things we can do, so say we have some of these blocks, so rather than converting them and mapping everything, if I wanted to start from scratch, say, hey, I have this block, and let's grab something from, again, my pool of diagrams, so we can go ahead and we can swap a block. Right, so I'll say that I want to do it drawing wide. Let's not retain any of the old scale, and let's use an attribute mapping. So what this will allow me to do is I can then search for a text file of attributes, right? So if I have some attributes that are commonly used, right, so I can see this and I can just see, hey, descriptor is going to equal tag, term in, term out, and there's just a very few one-liners here in a text file that I can leverage to transition that process, right? So to ease that transition, so I can do that information, and we want to pick a block from the icon menu. Right, so here it's a pressure, temperature, and just normally switch, and we can just choose one of these blocks to do that from. So show you that one more time. So we're drawing wide, we'll pick it, we won't retain any of the information, we'll pull the attributes, browse for that file, and go ahead, take that file, and there we go. You can see all the referencing blocks, similar blocks inside that drawing were are automatically changed and updated as well with their component tagging types, the pin connections, as well as the ins and the outs. And now we can trim that up, make that true, and now we have a nice starting to build a little bit more intelligence into this design. Again, benefits are is if I have nothing, there's no blocks, everything is just lines, arcs, and circles, how I can get to that transition. And then if I'm already using some blocks with attributes, how I can build upon that knowledge as well. So really helping to kind of show that streamlined process. And the last one is my favorite one. If we take a look at, this has a lot of blocks with attributes, right? And so I can take that information and really convert that in that conversion process. So the other tools, like I said, swap blocks, or I could just do a block replacement. So if I replace all the blocks in this active drawing, and what this is doing is I have this mapping file, which is saying, we open it up, what components am I looking at, right? So here, if I have an old block name, I can leverage all those and what I want to replace it with. So just pulling from the database, I know the exact database file. I can put in a multiplier there as well. I can add some attribute overrides as well. So really some flexibility here, but just from the basis of what I have now. So this is a push button. What I have next, which is another push button, right? So just mapping my old files to my new files, and that's all the Excel spreadsheet is, right? So now I can update those information, and now you can kind of see all the blocks are going to update, leveraging the catalog browser for those components. So what we've shown is we've shown the capability of AutoCAD Electrical to transition those AutoCAD files into intelligent AutoCAD Electrical files. At the end of the day, they're still both DWGs. One just has a little bit more level of intelligence. Again, benefits of intelligence is reporting features, so I can do wire to from reports, I can do bill of material reports, so really helping me ease that transition. There's some tools, and you get to choose when you convert those files versus when it might be more beneficial just to start from new and reference that information in. And the last thing we wanted to do, turning it up to 11, is we want to show the integration with Inventor. So if I want to get 3D intelligent information here, it's just as easy as saying, hey, I want to export this information, this active drawing here, this is schematic, or this wire diagram. I can save that information, and we'll just save it to my desktop, and we'll say AutoCAD Electrical to Autodesk Inventor Professional. Save that out. And now I can transition, so I'm going to switch over to my 3D modeler. Here we have a nice 3D model representation of what that cabinet might be, what's behind there. All right, so you can see that information. If I dive down into my wire harness, one thing to point out is if we talked about that catalog browser, so if I back up a step, you can kind of see here I have that same catalog browser I had in my 2D world. One of the first signs of this transition to our product development team is making an effort to make that transition easier, to make that integration tighter. So you can kind of see that I have a 2D footprint or a 3D footprint just depending on the CAD modeler that I'm using. So really great integration here. So I want to import that harness data. See mapping that AutoCAD Electrical to Inventor Professional. And one thing to point out is, so I just inserted this piece and maybe he's not mapped, so I can see I got some warnings that are coming on. So what does that mean? Well, I can see a description of the issue, what's going on. If I needed to insert a component, say a component was missing in my 3D space, I could grab from that catalog browser, but here I'll just assign that to a part. Right, so now I've assigned that. We can see that intelligent information, the wires, the gauge, the connector points are coming through. So that's another benefit to pushing that intelligent information we've created inside of electrical, pushing it into a tool like Inventor. So no warnings, great, we're good to go. Now we have a bowl of spaghetti. We have to from, right? So I have basically this is what I get from a to from report, right? What component it starts at, what component it ends at. But we want to take that to the next level. Okay. We can kind of see how I can automatically route those wires. Right? So grab all the wires that are unrouted, and what this is going to do is you can see I've drawn that harness up in 3D, right? Some smaller segments, some larger segments. And now it's going to automatically route those wires for me. one thing you'll notice is this one only has one wire going through it versus this one has three. So that cable segment is going to update. It's intelligent that way. Right, so we can take a look at maybe how some of these connectors are coming through, and we can still manipulate those. Right, so if I wanted to add a point here on this wire, right, to maybe make it a little bit more intelligent. So let's do that one more time. Let's add a point here. You can see is it's not a smooth connection here, so we can go ahead and I can take that point and I can move those points inside of the 3D space. So if I wanted to add additional, get a little bit more flexibility because, hey, I know I have a tight bend I have to go around, something I'm not going to be able to really see inside of a 2D model. So I can rotate this, bring this wire up a little bit more, take this, moving this point, and because I'm using a tool like electrical, right, in Inventor in the 3D space, now I can customize and make those, and now actually because I've manipulated that wire, if I'm going to report on that in a bill of materials, I'm going to have that bill of material information. I think one last thing to kind of show is we can go ahead and unroute some wires. So let's unroute these guys. Right, to show how those segments work. Right, so if I wanted to create a segment, it's just easy from point to point, right, leveraging that information, go ahead and create one more segment. And you'll kind of see here in a little bit more dynamic fashion of updating those segments and what that does for us. Right, so now I've created three separate segments. Let's reroute those wires, and we'll just say everything, those three we unrouted. Right, so now I have a little bit more control of how those wires are going into my motor starter. Right, so then from here, other things we could do inside the electrical space, if we go back into this harness, is we could then go ahead and create nail boards, we can create reports, get the benefits of having actual 3D representation of our parts, so I can actually know exactly what that wire length is, where before in 2D representation, it's just a wire without a length. So if we take a look back one more time, recapping what we did to be able to then go ahead and ask some questions, is we talked about the benefits of AutoCAD Electrical, right? So high-level symbol libraries, automatic reporting functionality, automatic wire naming, component tagging, and the majority of the time we spent on, well, how do I maximize and ease that transition from AutoCAD to AutoCAD Electrical? Show how we can bring in DWGs, we can convert those into intelligent components. Multiple facets, so the more intelligent your standard DWGs are today, the easier it makes that process to make that transition and add additional attributes with additional smart electrical functionality. And then by turning it up to 11, we looked at the integration between electrical and mechanical and how we can export that information, basically those wire to from reports, into Inventor and leverage that information to actually create 3D components of our project. So with that, Amy, I think I'll turn it over to you, and we can see if we have any questions.
I'm not seeing any questions at the moment. If you have any questions, you can enter them in the questions section to the right of your screen. Again, we want to thank you for being here today and joining us for the easing the transition to AutoCAD Electrical. Travis did a great job giving you some highlights of what electrical can bring to the table, as well as some of the tools that we can share and bring customers forward from just a basic 2D environment they're existing in today, and then utilizing that information with the rest of the team in a 2D, 3D electrical mechanical environment. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at amy@asti.com. Visit our training opportunities at our Live Lab Learning. And you can also subscribe to our channel and see some videos on YouTube. This presentation will be recorded. If you have any questions or want to review it again, please let me know. And with that, we thank you and have a great weekend.